Hey everyone, how's it going? Matt Jarbo here. So this is, going to be something definitely more on the conversational side of podcasting with this channel. I want to talk about some controversies. That's right, film controversies, stuff that you might not know about, stuff that you might find interesting, and that you might want to tell your friends because why not? Like Hollywood is not above controversy. My God, there's so much of it. There's so much of it these days. So I thought, why not talk about one of the most, I don't know, like major film controversies over the span of the last like 3/4 of a century. And that, of course, is Song of the South. Now, this movie, it exists, and a lot of people aren't happy about that, which makes a lot of sense. Other people out there are very much defending of it. Even people you may not expect to be defending it, but there are people out there that are defending it. They want it out there. Never mind the fact that Disney does not. Disney doesn't want this movie out there, but my God, do they want to profit off of it? I'm not even making that up. So why don't we just dive right the hell on into this thing, and you guys let me know what you think about it when we're done, okay? Leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe, all that shit. Let's dive in. So this is how it started. If you don't know the story of Song of the South, this is basically kind of how it went down. It's a 1946 American live-action / animated musical drama, one of the first of its kind, actually, produced by Walt Disney and released by RKO Radio Pictures. This particular story is based on a collection of Uncle Remus stories that were adapted by the author Joel Chandler Harris. And the thing is that, you gotta know Uncle Remus. Uncle Remus is kind of like an Aesop's fable kind of guy. He's telling these stories about morality and what needs to be done. But he's doing it in a very folksy, down south, antebellum South kind of way. Never mind the fact that this whole thing was supposed to take place after the Civil War. So, post antebellum South, although they do fail on that front, and we will be talking about that. What we know about this is that it takes place during the Reconstruction era. This is a period of time in the history after the American Civil War and the abolition of slavery. The story itself centers around 7-year-old Johnny, who, is just visiting his grandmother's plantation for an extended stay. Like, hey, what you doing this weekend? You want to go down to Nana's? Go down to Nana's and check out the plantation? I mean, these were affluent white people back in the 1800s, so, probably it's what they were going to do. Anyway, when he gets down there, he befriends Uncle Remus, who's one of the workers on the plantation. By the way, at this point, and again, Disney absolutely fails to establish this, these were free men and free women post-slavery. And they really dropped the ball on that. Like 100% dropped the ball on that one. Now, Johnny here, man, does this guy take a joy in hearing about the tales and the adventures of Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, Brer Bear. You know who they are. They've been around for a long time. And Johnny then learns from these stories how to cope with the challenges that he is experiencing while living on the plantation. This little affluent 7-year-old white kid named Johnny. Oh, my life is so terrible. Save me, Uncle Remus. It's like, well, little boy, you don't have any problems. You're white and you're 7. And I'm going to win an Academy Award for this that I can't even go to attend because I'm black. That's literally how this thing went down. I'm not even kidding you. Now, what you got to remember here, folks, is that Walt Disney had wanted to produce a film on this Uncle Remus series for quite some time. And this thing's from like back in the late 1800s, right? But it wasn't until 1939 that Disney himself began negotiating with the Harris family for the rights to this film. And back in 1944, a number of years after getting the rights, the filming finally began for Song of the South. The studio went as far as to construct a plantation set for the outdoor scenes, not shot in the actual South, because this is back in the 40s in California area, right, the West Coast. They went to Arizona because that just screams the southern states, Zona, the rolling pastures of tumbleweeds and, enough heat and nothingness to make you just want to fling yourself off a bridge. However, the film, being predominantly live action, did include a number of animated segments, which were then later released as their own standalone television features, right? Never mind, like I said, Disney may want to forget that this movie exists. They may want to forget that it's even a goddamn thing, but they still got a profit, right? Disney's going to Disney at this point. We know this. Now this movie is so funny. They shot it in Arizona, some parts of it in Hollywood, but it premiered in Atlanta in 1946, 2 years later. And of course, it was a success. That's the thing here. I don't think a lot of people realize is that this movie was like huge for the time. Okay. Like huge for the time. It actually went on to do like $65 million, which I think is around 300 million by today's standards back in the day. It went on to make a lot of money. People flocked to this thing, and it only had a budget of a little over $2 million. So that's not that bad. And if you want to hear something crazy, right? Disney himself back in 1938 is when he became interested in getting these storybooks. He heard these stories when he was a kid, and that's what he liked about them. Because again, these are like Aesop's fables. These are the kind of stories that, you tell children in order to kind of get them to think about being conscientious. I get it, right? Totally, I get it. Moral tales, things along those lines. But Disney being Disney, he wanted to make it. So he actually paid $10,000 to the Harris family, which is a little under, like, it's about $182,000 by today's standards. That's what he paid. $10,000 back in 1939 would have done really well. Would have bought somebody a number. They would have bought him a house and a car, and they would have been set for a very, very, very long time. But like I said, even according to some metrics, this movie has gone on to earn $300 million. So their paltry 182,000 doesn't even go up against the amount of money that Disney made off of making this thing. And I guarantee you they never got royalties for it. He bought the rights. They kept the rights. This is Disney. All right. You know how it is. You know what he did. So when the movie came out, what do the critics have to say about this? And this, of course, is where things get interesting. Because Bosley Crowther writes in the New York Times, more and more Walt Disney's craftsmen have been loading their feature films with so-called live action in place of their animated whimsies of the past. And by those just proportions has the magic of these Disney films decreased. This guy's a boomer, right? This guy's like, oh, there's less animated stuff. It's boomer, total boomer territory there. However, Time praised the animation as top-notch at Disney and delightful, but cautioned that it was bound to land them in hot water because of the character of Uncle Remus, who was bound to, and this is a quote, this is a direct quote from Time, I'm pulling this from Wikipedia, says, bound to enrage all educated Negroes and a number of damn Yankees. Because, of course, the terminology that we use as a society back, nearly 100 years ago, way, way, way different than now, what we could say in polite society. So keep that with a grain of salt. Now, going on, the film critic for the LA Times, a guy by the name of Charles Solomon, did touch upon this again for his review during its 1986 re-release. Okay, keep in mind, they know that there's a controversy. They knew that it was going to be controversial when they made the movie. Disney, still 40 years later, re-released it in theaters. But Charles Solomon here says, essentially a nostalgic Valentine to a past that never existed, and within those limits, it offers a pleasant, firmly diversion for holiday afternoons when the children get restless. So it's like, yeah, you want to give your children a false idea of what post-Civil War America was like? Come on down to the movies. It was the fucking 80s, dude. You know what? This was a year before Turtles, the animated show, hit TV. Okay? So I get it. There wasn't much going on. There was no internet. There was no Nintendo. You had Pong. You had arcades. I think the arcades would be a better draw than this, to be honest with you. However, Rotten Tomatoes reported here that ultimately 50% of the critics gave the film a positive review. 50%. It's certified rotten, right? At this point, it's a rotten rating. 14 reviews is all it has, guys. 14. That's it. That's all they have. 14 reviews. That's all they have. But the audience score is about 72% based, I believe, around like 50,000. So a lot of people have seen this movie, the taboo nature of it. They've seen it. And they have, of course, wanted to see more of it. So they liked it. And I think deep down, a lot of people out there who have an issue with this movie have never actually seen it. But people who have seen it, actually want other people to see to have a conversation. And again, who is saying that? That's where it gets kind of funny. However, let's talk about the whole point of this little podcast series, the controversy surrounding Song of the South, right? This is a big controversy here. The big reason, obviously, that this film has sparked a very significant controversy is for how it handled race. I mean, it could be better. It kind of handled it in a pretty bad way. Pretty stereotypical. It hit all the cliches, all the tropes, I mean, it really did. I was watching clips of it on YouTube before recording this, and yeah, it hits all those tropes pretty well. Now, one critic describes it as one of Hollywood's most resiliently offensive racist texts. Really? I mean, how many times did Quentin Tarantino write the N-word into Django Unchained? Right? I'm not trying to compare the two. I'm merely just pointing out some people out there that go a little bit too crazy. However, other critics out there have noted that the film's release back in the 40s as being part of the Double V campaign, or being released in the wake of this Double V campaign, which was a propaganda campaign in the United States starting during World War II to promote victory over racism in the United States and its armed forces, right? And victory over racism or over fascism abroad. You got to love it, right? They're rocking this Double V campaign, right? We have won against fascism and we have won over against racism here in the United States, which is an absolute lie. It's not real. But according to Wikipedia, the Double V campaign was a slogan and drive to promote the fight for democracy in overseas campaigns and at the home front in the United States for African Americans during World War II. The Double V refers to V for victory, sign prominently displayed by countries fighting for victory over aggression, slavery, and tyranny, but adopts a second V to represent the double victory for African Americans fighting for freedom overseas and at home. I mean, look, I'm not going to lie here. I'm just going to that comes across as wildly patronizing. It just comes across as being really? This is, you can tell if I was just going to equate this to modern day politics, the Double V campaign is something that would come out of woke left Twitter. And that's where it would come from. And they would go, no, we're beating it. You're not beating it. All right. Yeah, it's a good idea. And I think I'll tell you this. I think one of the reasons why this campaign exists is because there was a concerted effort from the Nazis to provide propaganda to African-American troops, more or less going why are you fighting for these guys? Just 60 years ago, they were killing a lot of you, there's slavery, and they were doing that. And I think this is a way to no, don't listen to that propaganda. You're all patriotic Americans. We love you. Emmett Till won't be killed for looking at a woman inappropriately and her lying about it, sparking the civil rights movement. That won't happen. God. Oh God. Look, the road to hell is paved in good intentions. Let's just be real on that one for a second. But anyway, like the filmmakers of this movie, they knew that things are going to be bad, right? They knew things were going to be bad because early in the film's production, there was a concern that the material would encounter controversy. Gee, you think that at some point in time, there might be a little bit of controversy surrounding this specific film. I mean, sure, we were 20 years away from the civil rights movement, and everything else. And we're 60 years post-slavery ending. Things haven't really gotten better. Jim Crow, segregation. I just don't see it being necessarily the biggest, you could tell there's going to be controversy. Anyway, so this is pretty bad here. So there's this guy named Vern Caldwell, who was a Disney publicist at the time. And he wrote to a producer named Pierce. That's this guy's name, Pierce. Anyway, now this is what he says, and again, I'm quoting it. He says, "The Negro situation is a dangerous one. Between the Negro haters and the Negro lovers, there are many chances to run afoul of situations that could run the gamut all the way from the nasty to the controversial." Basically saying, this movie is going to be seen as either offensive to racists or offensive to people who aren't racist but want equality for African Americans. It was basically maybe this is not the best idea. And he just worded it. And again, like the worst possible way. I understand that it's the 1940s. I'm not like, come on, dude. There's better words than that than you can use. But again, this is just it's a sign of the times. You know what I mean? It's a sign of the times. Like it feels like Disney himself wanted to make this thing, and Disney himself had like good intentions to make it. And at one point, even during I think it was like the writing of the film, he brought in a very left-leaning radical to work on it, this guy named Rapp. And even that guy was like, nah, man, like this is a bad idea. And Disney's like, that's why I want you to work on it, because it's a bad idea, so you can make it good. Which in essence, for like for the 40s makes a fair amount of sense, right? Like he's like, no, the wokies will hate it. We don't need any woke people hating this movie. You're a woke guy. You're an uber woke guy. You had soy in your coffee, sir. You can make this thing work. And it kind of makes sense, right? Bring the person in who is going to represent the audience. At least one half of the audience isn't going to like it potentially, and get them on board. And that might defeat out the other side. Truth of the matter is, I think it worked. Looking at the success of the film and the legacy of the film, quite frankly, I think that's kind of how it went down. But anyway, like when Disney first started making this, like I said, they were like stating that the African-American slaves were the people depicted, the actors were going to be depicted as like freed people. This is after the Civil War. Except here's a problem though, is that when Disney was asked about this, and this is a quote, they wanted this office called the Hayes office, says, and this is a letter they wrote to Disney, be certain that the frontispiece, I'm probably mispronouncing that, of the book mentioned that the established date was in the 1870s. Okay, so just to be sure, like the original books set in the 1870s, Uncle Remus, kind of like this traveling guy telling all these stories with all these morals and stuff. Freed man. Okay, you got to make sure it's a free man. And then from there, they never put that on the book. They never put that in the book or in the movie. They never put in the movie that these people were supposed to be free. They and if you watch it, if you really watch it, it doesn't really come up until the end of the movie when Uncle Remus is leaving because, he was verbally accosted by I think Miss Sally, the mother of Johnny, and he gets in a wagon to leave, and this is in the movie. It's insane. So Johnny, who is wearing all red, he decides he is gonna like run through this field to catch up. He's gonna cut him off at the pass. And he's running and he's yelling out, "Uncle Remus, Uncle Remus!" And it's like a bullpen, and the bull sees the boy literally wearing a red, like crushed velvet, suit. And the bull just chases this kid down. Like it's that scene from Maximum Overdrive where that one like construction vehicle like chases down kids in a baseball field. And he just nails Johnny against the fence. And then everyone collects him and you're like, oh my God, is this kid dead? Like, holy crap, is this kid gonna survive? And then, like Johnny's on his deathbed. He's just, oh, I'm dying. Bring me Remus. And so they get Remus and they bring Remus in. And then Remus, tells him a story. And then miraculously, Johnny survives. The power of Christ came in through the story of morals and brought back little Johnny. It's a movie, but still. That's something that happened. And they weren't happy that going back to the statement about these are freed slaves. These are free people. Now a guy by the name of Walter Francis White, not that Walter White, the executive secretary of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP, telegraphed major newspapers around the country with this statement, erroneously claiming that the film depicted the antebellum setting. Now, the antebellum setting was before the Civil War. It wasn't the Reconstruction era. It was the pre-Civil War, like the stuff that I think Gone with the Wind, touches upon. That's where its criticism is. By the way, both this movie and that movie, sorry, Heidi McDaniel. Anyway, So this is what he says. He says, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People recognizes in Song of the South remarkable artistic merit in the music and in the combination of living actors and the cartoon technique. It regrets, however, that in an effort to neither offend audiences in the North or South, that production helps perpetuate a dangerously glorified picture of slavery. Making use of the beautiful Uncle Remus folklore, Song of the South unfortunately gives the impression of an idyllic master-slave relationship, which is a distortion of the facts. And yeah, again, if you don't know that these are freed individuals, that this is post-Civil War America, you are not going to know. You are not going to know. And that is, and that, again, that can set some pretty, I don't want to say like dangerous elements, but again, it's like if you're looking for realism, I don't know, it's a movie about a talking bunny and bear and fox and stuff. But I get it. Representation matters, by the way. So anyway, people weren't too happy with it either. So you had the National Negro Congress set up picket lines in theaters in the big cities where the film played with protests. And these protesters were holding the signs that read Song of the South is an insult to the Negro people and lampooning Jingle Bells and chanted Disney tells lies about the South. I didn't think about that one. Disney tells lies about the South. Yeah, okay, that makes sense, right? You got to kind of play it, but yeah, okay. I mean, it's catchy, right? And when you're trying to get a message across, politically speaking, having a solid jingle helps because it worms its way into people's minds, and when it's there, you're good. Now, it did go a little bit further. On April 2nd, 1947, a group of protesters did march around Oakland, California Paramount Theater with the signs reading, "We want democracy, not slavery. Don't prejudice children's minds with films like this." And I get it. It doesn't have an accurate representation, and that is a problem. But again, people from all over really seem to like it. So that's kind of the thing where it's like, yeah, it was controversial, but it made Disney a shitload of money. But also, the National Jewish Post scorned the fact that the film's lead was not allowed to attend its premiere in Atlanta due to the race. Yeah, come on, man. James Baskett, Uncle Remus himself, this guy, is like Hattie McDaniel when she won the Oscar for Gone with the Wind, Best Supporting. And it's like she wasn't allowed to attend because of segregation laws and because of race and all that stuff. I mean, you can't I find it to be insane that even happened. I know that sounds ridiculous to say, right? Like I'm a near 40-year-old white guy and I'm saying that, but still I find it to be crazy. It's just nuts. But anyway, James Baskett was voted in an Academy Honorary Award. So he got an Academy Honorary Award for his portrayal of Uncle Remus. He was the first African-American man to win this award or any kind of Oscar. And like Hattie McDaniel was the first black woman to win the award for Best Supporting, to win an Oscar at all. So it's like they're trailblazers. And that is a legacy that is actually good, that they're trailblazers. But interestingly enough, in our society now, their accomplishments and how they were paving the way, even though things aren't always going to go as well as they should, that these stories are being kind of silenced. I mean, look at last year with Gone with the Wind on HBO Max. They did put up a disclaimer, an interesting little 5-minute history lesson in front of it, which I thought was really good. And Disney kind of refuses to do that here by not putting this movie out anywhere, but we're going to talk about that. And again, there's a wide level of hypocrisy. So when you want to also talk, oh, by the way, real quick. So the song Zippity Doo-Dah, Zippity-A, right? Won the Academy Award for Best Original Song. So Disney was rolling in cash and awards. They didn't care about any of this controversy. Disney himself might have said something about it. He didn't care about it at all. So let's talk about the legacy. Disney continued to produce content surrounding Brer Rabbit, Brer Bear, and Brer Fox. This actually continued on in comic books that ran from 1942 to 2012 in the United States, Denmark, and the Netherlands. Right? It did very well overseas. It did very well here. We're talking what, 70 years that they ran a comic book. Look, I understand people again, keep in mind 2012. That's the thing to remember, 2012. Now that and the characters themselves even appeared in a bunch of animated shorts. Rabbit, Fox, and Bear all appeared in the House of Mouse. They also appeared in Mickey's Magical Christmas. And they, Brer Bear and Tar Baby, which I recently just learned is not a good term. Apparently I had a pretty sheltered upbringing as a child. So whoopsie. But they also appeared in the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which came out in 88 or 89. So it's like this movie was old and it had controversy, but they're still profiting off of it as up into the 80s, up until the 2000s. But also, oh my God, you guys cannot forget about Splash Mountain. Splash Mountain here is the big one. Now, while Uncle Remus was in fact removed from the ride, and it did feature Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, Brer Bear, and other elements of it, and it played some of the songs, Michael Eisner, who was CEO at the time, he was CEO of Disney from 84 to 2005, I think. And he was in for a long period of time, and he oversaw its construction at not only Disneyland, I believe Disney World and Tokyo Disney. They were going to do Disney, Euro Disney, but the budget was too much and the weather's too shitty. So they didn't do Splash Mountain there. And even though now they're looking to kind of retool Splash Mountain to make it more Princess and the Frog oriented, which is fine, they still were profiting off of this, for 30 years as that this ride was there, and again, I understand the reason why they wanted to tool it. The George Floyd protests were what prompted them to say something. Although their publicist was like, no, we've been working on this since 2019. It's been in the works now for a whole year before any of this stuff happened. No, we're good. We're not reactionary. We were literally already on the forefront of this. Which who knows? I mean, they're changing up Disney's Jungle Cruise as well. So goodbye Trader Sam. I don't know how you feel about that. I never cared. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Fine, that's fine. Some of these things can be updated. That's perfectly fine. But they still were making money off it, which is where you have the hypocrisy. Eisner, knew that it was controversial. He knew all this, that it was controversial, and he didn't care. They still found ways to profit off of it. So it goes to show you that Disney, I know people like to freak out about that too. They go, Disney's never this bad. Disney's always been this bad. Okay. Like now we have the internet and the internet catalogs all this stuff. So we know. But let's talk about the situation here involving home video, because this is where things get a little bit on the really super interesting side. Now, Disney itself has never released a complete version of this film on home video in the United States because of the controversies. And this goes all the way back to 1986, I believe, when Michael Eisner did say here that the film would not be receiving a home video release in the United States because they didn't want accusations of racism, nor did they want a backlash. And they didn't want to have a disclaimer. Disclaimers are fine, man. Disclaimers are fine. People are okay with disclaimers. At this point, they'd prefer the content to be there so we can view it through the historical lens and the context of when it was created. But have a damn disclaimer. It's not that big of a deal. But anyway, when it came to working on Splash Mountain, Eisner is the one who requested that Remus not be featured, by the way. I just want to make sure I get that abundantly clear. And when it came time for a new CEO, Bob Iger, when he was asked about Song of the South coming to DVD, he called the film antiquated and fairly offensive, and that there was no plans to release it on home video in the United States. Funny thing about that is even in Disney Plus, it is saying no to Disney Plus, which people kind of already figured. Never mind, they put a disclaimer in front of the Muppet Show recently, but hey, whatever. But when asked about this in 2019, Bob Iger affirmed that the film would not be getting a release on the service, even with an outdated cultural depictions disclaimer, stating that the film is not appropriate in today's world. I mean, I get it, right? But again, it's also like disclaimers for Gone with the Wind. You can do a disclaimer. Outdated cultural depictions are a thing. Like you can't, I don't know. I'm in the mindset. I'm of the mindset. We're running from the past. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. But, being aware of it so you don't repeat it. That's kind of how I view it. Okay, so then we get into who's actually making a push for this thing to come on out. It's been a couple years. It's been 4 years. So we have to see where she's feeling on it now. But when Whoopi Goldberg was inaugurated as a Disney legend, she expressed a desire to bring back Song of the South. She wanted it re-released publicly to American audiences. And she says, I'm trying to find a way to get people to start having conversations about bringing Song of the South back so we can talk about what it was and where it came from and why it came out, which again is an interesting point because, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Of course, I haven't been able to find any more movement on that, considering that Iger 2 years later was like, it ain't coming to Disney Plus. This stuff is stuck in a vault that's like buried deep under the ocean. So it ain't coming out, at least not in the United States, because the full film, by the way, was never released here, but it was released in its entirety on VHS and Laserdisc in various European and Asian countries. In the United Kingdom, it was released on VHS between the years 1982 and 2000. So this movie exists outside of the United States. So so again, this is where you have to love the hypocrisy of the company. It's an outdated movie. It's fairly offensive. No way are we going to be putting a disclaimer on it. Fine. You want to take those stances. You know what? Certain members of your audience will applaud you for it. You're virtuous, right? You're full of virtue, Iger. But then outside of the country, you've got comic books. You've got the movie coming out on VHS and Laserdisc. And I'll tell you what caught my attention today, which is kind of what prompted this whole thing. I was looking through Facebook and their marketplace, and someone is selling a DVD of Song of the South for $14. And I'm like, damn, that's okay. I'm like, really? I'm like, it didn't come out on DVD. Looking into it further, it clearly is a DVD rip. I went on eBay. I took a look on eBay. Found someone selling it, $81. They open it up and it's literally just a burned DVD R plus with the with Song of the South scrawled on it. So at no point in time is this even like remotely an issue. For like Disney, they're not stopping it being sold en masse, pirated en masse here in the United States. You know why people are going to buy it? Because it's taboo. People are going to buy it because it's taboo. People are going to talk about it because it's taboo. People are going to see it. They're going to seek it out because it's taboo. And that is where the problem then lies. Because Whoopi Goldberg is right. Having a conversation is better than silence. And especially in this year and this time, having a conversation is better than silence. So if you want to see the movie and you're worried about, getting busted for getting it overseas or whatever, you can pick it out. You can pick it up finally. 20 years from now, the film will enter public domain in the year 2041, 95 years after the film's copyright. So we are still going to get it. It's just going to take 20 more years. I'm going to be near 60 years old when that movie finally hits public domain. I probably still won't own it or seek it out, But again, that's where we find ourselves with the story of the controversy surrounding Song of the South. If you enjoyed this, or you at least found this to be an interesting commentary, please let me know down in the comments section. If you made it this far in the video, please type Song of the South in the chat so I know. And if you want me to cover more of these controversial situations in Hollywood, let me know. I'll talk to you all later. Have yourself a great day. Thank you for listening, and peace out.